with me to John chapter 21. We're going to read from verse 15 to 19. And Peter, he had heard Jesus call to follow him. He's walked with him. He's been there on a journey for 3 years. Jesus was crucified, and Peter finds himself on this beach. And this is what it says, John chapter 21, verse 15. It says, when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said to him, you know that I love you. Feed my lambs, he told him. A second time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, he said to him, you know that I love you. Shepherd my sheep, he told him. He asked him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved when he asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know everything, and you know that I love you. Feed my sheep, Jesus said. Truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you would tie your belt and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go. He said this to indicate by what kind of death Peter would glorify God. And after saying this, he told them, follow me. Tonight, I want to look at Peter because what we see is Peter getting a comeback. You see, Peter has failed. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when we fail, when we get things wrong, we go, that's it, I'm done. There's no way back from this. We think that of God, that when we mess up, you know what, God could never use me. He would never use me again. Maybe we say the wrong thing, or we walk away when we should have stayed and stood firm, or maybe we fall back into the same pattern or destructive pattern that we promised God that we would walk away from for the third or the fourth or the 50th time. And we go, this failure defines me. It can leave us feeling finished. And I believe that's exactly where Peter was in John 21. He had followed Jesus those 3 years. He had walked on water to meet Jesus in the midst of a storm. He had seen miracles. He had declared to Jesus that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He knew who Jesus was. But in the time when pressure came, in the courtyard by the fire, as Jesus was bound and being questioned by the religious leaders, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times. And after the resurrection, Peter, he wasn't found leading the disciples the way he ought to be. He was fishing. John chapter 21, verse 3, he said these words. He says, I'm going fishing. Simon Peter said to them, we're coming with you, he told them. You see, this wasn't just a recreational fishing trip. What should we do on Saturday? This was Peter handing in his resignation. He had, the man who had once declared who Jesus was, who had walked with him, talked with him, had seen miracles happen, who declared that he would never walk away. Matthew 26, verse 34. Peter told him, even if everyone else falls away because of you, I will never fall away. This guy who promised, who declared, I will never stop trusting you, following you, declaring you Jesus, had messed up, had denied Jesus, and now had walked away in defeat. The bold, confident one, the one who had said, I'm always in it. I'm always here by your side. He's messed up and failed as he declared, no, I don't know Jesus. I'm not with him. I'm not one of them. But Peter, in this failure, he's off fishing. We don't get told exactly why Peter went fishing, but I believe that Peter was ashamed of his denial, that he felt like a fraud and a failure because Jesus, who he had followed, who he had served and stood with in difficult moments, he had died, he had denied. And now Jesus, the one that he loved, the one that he followed, had been crucified on the cross, had been raised from the dead, and in fact, Peter had seen him. But I think that night round the fire had got to him. And the weight and the shame of his failure had overcome him. So rather than waiting around to be told to leave or to get out or for his failure to be pointed out, he left. And he says, I can't do this. I'll go fishing instead. And what he was saying was, look, I'm going back to the life I knew. I'm going back to what I had before I met Jesus. Because I've got it so wrong. I've messed up. But that life of fishing was a life without calling. It was a life without purpose. Not that fishing is without purpose, but for Peter, it wasn't what he was meant to do. He had been called by Jesus to be a fisher of men. But he was going back to the water. And what I love is that Jesus doesn't wait for Peter to work it all out, to get it all together and to come back, but he goes looking for him. And the same is true for us, is that Jesus, he goes looking for us, in search of us. And what we see is that Jesus meets us where we are. What we read is that early in the morning, after a night of catching nothing, Jesus appears on the shores. And verse 5 of John 21, he says, friends, Jesus called them, you don't have any fish, do you? No, they answered. I'm sure Peter was pretty discouraged at this moment. He had walked away from his call. He had denied Jesus. He was riddled with guilt and shame over his denial. He had went back to fishing, the one thing he was good at, the one thing he knew. And his net was empty. But what happens is incredible, because Jesus asked them to do something unusual. To cast their net to the right-hand side of the boat. Usually they fished on the left because it kept the nets away from the steering mechanisms and all of that kind of stuff that could have got the nets caught up. And they threw the nets onto the left. They'd done that all night, nothing. Jesus says, hey, throw them out to the right. It came with a sense of risk, but with obedience. They threw out the nets at this stranger's request because they didn't know it was Jesus. But there was something going on here, because Jesus was asking them to do something that they didn't quite understand. You see, the right-hand side is the side of honor. So if I bring you to my table and I place you at my right-hand side, I'm saying, hey, you're the important person here. It was a place of favor and blessing. And Jesus asked them to throw their nets to the right-hand side on this boat, and they cast them out. And he was saying that there was blessing and favor upon them, and they caught this great catch of fish that they couldn't even haul it in. And in that moment, John, one of the other disciples, recognizes who's standing on the beach. Verse 7 of John 21 says, the disciple, the one Jesus loved, said to Peter, it's the Lord. And maybe John had recalled the day when Jesus first called Peter and James and John, how they had been told to let down their nets, how they'd caught such a catch of fish that it took the second boat that James and John were on to bring it in. And the two boats were so overladen, they were nearly beginning to sink. That was the day they heard Jesus say to them, follow me. And maybe in this moment of this great catch, John remembered that moment, but whatever happened, he recognized Jesus. And he tells Peter, and Peter, who's the impulsive one, the one that's quick to draw a sword and cut off soldiers' ears, jumps in. Clothed and just jumps in, and off he goes and swims the shore. And what he finds when he gets there, in John 21 verse 9, we're told that when he got out on the land, he saw a charcoal fire there with fish lying on it and bread. The charcoal fire is important, because the only other time in the Gospel of John that we read of a charcoal fire is John chapter 18 verse 18. It says this, it says, now the servants and the officials had made a charcoal fire because it was cold. And they were standing there warming themselves, and Peter was standing with them warming himself. You know where that charcoal fire was? That was in the courtyard when Jesus was before the officials. That charcoal fire was the one Peter had warmed himself round when he denied Jesus. And here he is, a charcoal fire with Jesus. And Jesus is there around the fire, this charcoal fire, the smell of it maybe in his nose, not to humiliate Peter, but to heal him. See, Jesus brings Peter back to that moment, the place of his greatest failure, to meet him at his point of need. Not to condemn him, but to meet him with grace and deal with his heart. And Jesus deals with each of our hearts. It's interesting that Peter denied Jesus 3 times round the first charcoal fire. And round the second charcoal fire, Jesus asks him 3 times, Simon, son of John, do you love me? 3 denials, 3 questions, 3 opportunities to come back and come clean. And I think it's amazing that Jesus doesn't come and say, Peter, are you sorry for denying me? Peter, will you promise never to do it again? He doesn't say those things. He says, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Because that's what's most important to Jesus, not the performance, not the perfection, but our love. And Peter, you know what, we're told that he's hurt by this question the 3rd time it's asked. Verse 17, he responds saying, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. He was saying, look at my heart. I love you above all else. It was a declaration, a confession that, Lord, yes, I love you. I've denied you. I've walked away. But Lord, I love you. And this is the moment that things begin to change. Because this is the start of his comeback. You see, Jesus isn't looking for perfect disciples. He's looking for honest ones. He wants us to be honest, to confess our feelings, to declare our struggles, and to repent when we sin. To say we're sorry for the things we've got wrong and to turn from them back to Jesus. And Peter, in this moment, He's saying, Lord, I denied you there, but I will not deny you here. I love you. I love you. I love you. And what's beautiful is that every time Peter answers, Jesus responds with a new assignment. You see, what's beautiful is that Jesus recommissions us for his purpose. Peter, he declared to Peter, feed my lambs, take care of my sheep, feed my sheep. In other words, Peter, I'm not finished with you. You've still a part to play. You're not meant to be back here on the water fishing. You're meant to be going after men and women, a fisher of men as I called you to be. Don't give up. Don't walk away, because I haven't given up on you. Jesus was there on the shore. Oh, Peter had walked away. Peter had got discouraged. Peter had allowed the shame and the guilt of his denials of Jesus to overcome him. To say it was finished, it was done. And Jesus shows up. He says, I'm here. I've come after you because I haven't given up on you. And when we fail, when we get things wrong, often we think that God puts us on a box, puts us on a shelf, says, I'm done with you. I can't use you. But Jesus takes the broken pieces of our story and turns them around to work for his glory. He takes the broken pieces of our story and he turns them around to work for his glory. And that's what he does with Peter. Peter's ministry was going to look different. This fisherman who had once been quite cocky and arrogant, the guy that had all the answers, that was in the forefront of every story, who thought he was the strongest, thought he was the greatest, thought he would never fail. Even if everybody else falls away, Lord, not me. This Peter, he was now going to minister from a place of tenderness, of empathy, of having walked in that grace and mercy of Jesus, because he had stood around both those charcoal fires. He knew what it was to personally be forgiven by Jesus, to be recalled and recommissioned by Jesus. And the man who once denied him around a fire with just a few people got up in front of thousands and boldly declared Jesus Christ is Lord. And 3,000 people got saved, not because he thought he was special, not because he was the best of the best, but because he had experienced the love and grace of Jesus for himself. You see, failure doesn't disqualify us. It doesn't rule us out. It can prepare us, just as it did Peter. So don't let the enemy make your failings your finish point, because there's forgiveness and restoration in Jesus tonight. He is much bigger than all our mistakes. The question is, will we follow him? Peter was charged with these words. In John 21:18, Jesus said, truly I tell you, when you were younger, you would tie your belt and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go. And John tells us that these words were to tell us that Peter was going to die, to glorify God, a death on a cross. You see, here's the thing, following Jesus is not without cost. He laid down his life for us, and in turn he asks us to lay down our lives for him. And each of those paths looks different for each and every person here. But the question still comes the same. And Jesus, after he said this, turned to Peter and he told him, "Follow me." Will you follow him tonight? Despite the feelings, despite maybe when you have walked away, when you've got it wrong, when you've thought you were done, tonight will you hear him saying, "Follow me," because the invitation still stood for Peter and it still stands for each of us today. Jesus hasn't changed his mind about us. He still loves us. And you might, like Paul said earlier, you might be going, "Oh, you don't know the life and the path I've walked." But he does. And he still declares, "Will you follow me?" Are you in? You see, Jesus meets us where we are. He knows exactly where you are tonight, the path you've taken to get here. He knows those moments of failure. And he comes and he says, "Will you follow me?" He deals with our heart. When we're carrying guilt and shame over the things that we've done or said or failed to do, he comes and he says, "Hey, I'm still here. Will you come back? Will you come close?" Because he's willing to forgive, willing to restore, and he recommissions us, gives us purpose in our life as we choose to live for him. I wonder what your comeback moment looks like. You might be here tonight and you're living in the shadow of failure. You're carrying that weight like Peter was. Maybe it's moral failure. You've done something you swore you wouldn't do. Maybe it's spiritual failure. You've drifted. You've gone cold. Maybe it's relational failure. You've hurt someone or been hurt by someone and pushed God or his church away. For some, you're still showing up, but actually you've gone back to old patterns. You've gone back fishing like Peter, the old ways of thinking. And Jesus stands on the shore and he calls out, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" You know, tonight as we close, Paul's going to come and sing a song for us. But I want to leave you with just this thought. Jesus, he's not condemning you. He's calling you. He hasn't written you off. He's writing you back into his story. The question is, will you come? Will you come and follow him? Could you close your eyes for a moment? I've thought about how to end this moment tonight. And I know time has run on. But I wonder, do you need to respond? Do you need to come back to Jesus? Maybe you need to come for the first time. Whether you failed, you need Jesus to restore your heart. Can I say, come to him tonight? You've been distant, but you want to return to fellowship with Jesus, then come tonight. You sense Jesus is calling you, asking, "Do you love me?" Will you come tonight? And as Paul sings over us, the invitation is here to come. And if you'd love to give your life to Jesus, you need to come back to Jesus. You need restoration or healing from pain in your heart, then come, and I would invite you, as he sings, to come to the front. And that takes courage. But come, I'll pray with you. And you can know what it is, like Peter, to follow him. Thank you, Paul.